I'm an elder of the Luton Jewish community. Um, there are two elders, the other one's older than me. So I've got a lot of connections with Luton Synagogue, Luton Hebrew congregation, and particularly with the building that used to be the synagogue at 116 Bury Park Road. When the Second World War started, a lot of people were evacuated, moved out from the big cities, particularly London, and a lot of them finished up in Luton. So that the number of people in Luton went from 25 families to about 2,000 people, 2,000 Jewish people in Luton. The result was that the decision was made at the end of the war to look for a bigger building. And in 1949, the Empire Cinema at 116 Bury Park Road was purchased and work was done to convert it. It wasn't actually opened until 1953, nearly 4 years later. And by that time, a lot of the people who had moved out from London and other places because of the Second World War had actually gone and were no longer in the town. So there were about 200 people. When the Jewish community, the Luton Jewish community, bought the buildings, was to change the balcony into classrooms. And there were classrooms for the Sunday school. Inside the synagogue, there was basically a cupboard, which is where called the Ark of the Covenant, which is where the scrolls were kept. All round the walls, there was stained glass with pictures of different things relating to the Jewish religion. So when a baby is born, the first thing you have to do is introduce them to the Jewish religion. And there's two things associated with that. All babies there's a ceremony where they are named. They're given a Hebrew name as well as the English name that they will use every day. Boy babies, when they're 8 days old, are circumcised, and that introduces boys to the Jewish religion. As they get a little bit older, when they're 3, 4, 5 years old, it's quite normal to bring them with to services and to events that take place in the synagogue and in people's homes to introduce them to the Jewish religion. And it's done quite informally, so that, for instance, there will be activities which are put on just for young children to be partly games and partly social, but also learning. And from about the age of 6, they actually start to learn. So they'll learn to read in Hebrew, they'll learn to understand about festivals, they'll understand about the customs of the religion, and they will participate at home and in the synagogue and in other people's houses. They will participate in all sorts of events. Now, there's one interesting thing which I like, which helps make it attractive, and that is almost all Jewish events involve food. And there's particular foods for particular occasions. So, for instance, when it's the Jewish New Year, you want everybody to have a good and sweet year. So you need something sweet. So honey cake is the tradition, and there are different traditions for different parts of the year. And children will get to understand about festivals and special occasions, often through the food and the activities associated with them. When they're about 5 or 6, they start learning the language, they start learning Hebrew, they start learning about the festivals, they start learning about the activities, and that increases so that when girls are 12 years old, there is a ceremony where they're formally introduced into the Jewish religion, called a bat chayil or a bat mitzvah. And when boys are 13, because boys take longer than girls, when boys are 13, they have an equivalent ceremony, more formal, called a bar mitzvah. Boys are bar mitzvah, girls are bat mitzvah, male and female. And from then on, they're full members of the community. They have responsibilities to participate, to join in, to make up the numbers, to be part of the activities that go on. That lasts the rest of your life. That goes on forever. But when you get married, for instance, then there is a Jewish ceremony associated with weddings. And then after you get married and you have a baby, then the process starts all over again. So there's a lot going on to encourage children to join very young with their parents, and then to continue for the rest of their lives. And of course, many do. Some choose not to, but the majority do. The building had been a cinema since the 1920s, and actually had quite an interesting history. So, for instance, there's a picture of the inside of the cinema, and before it was a cinema, it had been a factory, the Dynamo Propeller Factory. But there's a picture of the inside of the cinema, and there's also a picture where they were showing a Tarzan film, and to publicize it, they borrowed an elephant and walked the elephant down the road outside the cinema, and there's a picture of the elephant outside the cinema. Over a period of time, the number of Jewish people living in Luton reduced, so that there weren't 200 anymore. There were then, by the year 2000, there were only about 130 or 140 Jewish people. And the synagogue was too big. So in 2000, we sold, just after 2000, the year 2000, we sold the building, and it became the Islamic Cultural Center, which was a good use for it, continued the religious use. And that was the end of our connection with 116 Bury Park Road. It had been a very successful connection from 1949, when it was purchased, to the year 2000, when it was sold. And so over 50 years of use, and it served the Jewish people in Luton very, very well.